Have you ever wondered why you feel like you're living someone else's life? Why every day seems like an empty repetition of expectations that were never truly yours? Today you'll discover the deepest truth about your existence and how to regain absolute control of your inner destiny. Imagine for a moment that your entire life you've been playing a role. A character created by your parents' expectations, social pressure, inherited fears, and the masks you've worn to be accepted. But behind that constant performance, there exists someone real, someone authentic, who has been patiently waiting to be discovered. Carl Jung, one of history's most brilliant psychologists, dedicated his life to understanding this phenomenon and discovered something revolutionary. Most people live their entire existence without truly knowing themselves. Do you know what humanity's greatest tragedy is? It's not death, it's not disease, it's not poverty. It's living a complete life while being a stranger to yourself. It's reaching the end of your days and realizing you were never really you, that every important decision was made based on what others expected, on what you believed was right according to external standards, but never from your deepest truth. Jung understood that within every person exists what he called the self, your purest and most authentic essence. But most of us live identified solely with what he termed the persona, that social mask we develop to navigate the world. The problem arises when this mask becomes so thick that we forget something more exists beneath. Think about your typical day. How many times do you act automatically? How many decisions do you make without really asking yourself what you genuinely want? From the clothes you choose to the conversations you maintain, from the work you perform to the relationships you sustain. How much of all that truly reflects who you are at your deepest core? The first great revelation is this: you've been living the life of an imposter, and that imposter is yourself. It's not that someone else has taken control of your existence. It's that you have chosen, consciously or not, to abandon your authenticity for security, for acceptance, for the deep fear of being rejected, if you show who you really are. Jung observed that most people prefer the comfort of the known, even if unsatisfactory, rather than face the uncertainty of discovering their true nature. Why? Because knowing yourself requires courage. It requires being willing to confront aspects of your personality you prefer to ignore. It requires questioning beliefs you've held for decades. It requires, in essence, dying psychologically to be reborn as who you really are. But here comes something fascinating. When you begin this process of genuine self-knowledge, when you start stripping away the masks and connecting with your real essence, something magical happens. Life stops feeling like a burden and becomes an adventure. Decisions become clearer because you have a center from which to make them. Relationships transform because you no longer need constant approval from others to feel valid. Here's your first practical exercise. For the next 3 days, before making any decision, however small, ask yourself this question: does this reflect who I really am? Or is it what I think I should do? It can be as simple as choosing what to have for breakfast, or as complex as deciding whether to maintain a certain friendship. The key is beginning to develop that conscious connection with your true being. If this message resonates with you, give this. But this leads us to the third revelation, perhaps the most disturbing of all, and it's that within you exists something Jung called the shadow. And until you make peace with it, you'll continue sabotaging your own happiness without understanding why. Now we arrive at the most uncomfortable but also most liberating territory of this entire process. Jung discovered something that completely challenges the image you have of yourself as a fundamentally good, balanced, and conscious person. Within your psyche exists what he called the shadow. All those aspects of your personality you've repressed, denied, or judged as unacceptable. Have you ever felt disproportionate anger towards someone and afterward wondered where that intensity came from? Have you experienced envy, jealousy, vengeful thoughts, or impulses that made you feel guilty for having them? Have you surprised yourself acting in ways that go completely against your declared values? That's your shadow emerging. Most people believe that being a good person means never having dark thoughts, aggressive impulses, or emotions they consider negative. But Jung understood this is a dangerous illusion. The more you try to be perfect, the more you deny the less noble aspects of your nature, the more power you give your shadow to control you from the unconscious. Think about people you know who are always trying to appear like saints, who never admit to having petty thoughts or selfish impulses. Have you noticed how often these same people explode in unexpected ways? How they can be extremely cruel precisely because they see themselves as incapable of cruelty. That's the shadow operating. Jung had a powerful phrase, "I'd rather be whole than good." What did he mean by this? That it's psychologically healthier to recognize and integrate all aspects of your personality, including the less favorable ones, than to live in the illusion of being a unidimensionally positive person. This doesn't mean acting on all your dark impulses. It means recognizing they exist, understanding where they come from, and finding conscious and constructive ways to channel that energy. Because the energy you use to repress your shadow is energy that's not available for your growth and creativity. Have you noticed how the most authentic and magnetic people you know have a certain raw honesty about themselves? They're not constantly trying to impress you with their goodness. They can admit their flaws, recognize their less noble impulses, and talk about their internal struggles naturally. That authenticity is magnetic because it's rare in a world full of masks. Here comes the third exercise, and this might be the most revealing of all. Ask yourself this question: what aspects of my personality do I most desperately try to hide from others? They might be controlling tendencies, envious thoughts, vengeful impulses, needs you consider shameful. Write them on paper without judging yourself. Just acknowledge them. Then ask yourself, how might these repressed parts of me be sabotaging my life? For example, if you completely deny your controlling tendency, you might be controlling others in very subtle ways that ruin your relationships. If you repress your natural aggression, you might be being passive-aggressive without realizing it. Shadow integration isn't a comfortable process. It requires you to be brutally honest with yourself about who you really are, not who you'd like to be or who you think you should be. But the gift of this process is extraordinary. You free yourself from the psychological prison. But to reach this type of relationship, you first have to do the internal work of knowing yourself, integrating your repressed aspects, developing a healthy relationship with yourself. Only then can you see others as they really are, instead of as projections of your own unmet needs. Jung had another profound observation. The most transformative relationships are those that force you to grow beyond your psychological comfort zone. They're not necessarily the most comfortable, but those that challenge you to become a more complete and authentic version of yourself. This means some relational conflicts aren't there to be resolved, but to be navigated consciously. It's not about eliminating all tensions, but learning to dance with them maturely, using friction as opportunity for greater self-knowledge and mutual growth. And here comes something liberating. When you stop projecting your internal issues onto others, you also stop taking so personally the projections others place on you. You understand that when someone reacts exaggeratedly toward you, it probably has more to do with their internal world than with you specifically. This understanding gives you extraordinary freedom in relationships. You no longer need to constantly defend yourself or try to control how others perceive you. You can remain centered in your own truth while allowing others to have their own psychological processes. But this leads us to the fifth and most powerful revelation, the one Jung considered the ultimate goal of all human life: individualization, the process of becoming who you really came to be in this world. Now we arrive at the heart of everything Jung understood about human potential. There exists a process he called individuation, and it's literally the central purpose of your existence, becoming the most authentic and complete expression of who you really are. Not who others want you to be, not who you think you should be according to external standards, but who you genuinely are in your deepest essence. Individuation isn't an abstract or esoteric concept. It's a concrete psychological process that involves integrating all aspects of your personality, conscious and unconscious, into a coherent and authentic totality. It's like assembling a puzzle where the pieces are different parts of your being that you've kept separate or in conflict. Have you ever had moments in your life where you feel you're finally being completely yourself? Where you don't need to pretend, where your actions flow naturally from your deepest center, where you feel total alignment between who you are inside and how you show yourself to the world? Those are glimpses of the state of individuation. But here comes something that might surprise you. Individuation requires you to psychologically separate from the excessive influence of others, including family, friends, society, and culture. It doesn't mean becoming a hermit, but developing an internal center so strong that you can be in the world without being completely molded by it. Jung observed that most people live what he called a collective life, where their values, decisions, and even their sense of identity are determined mainly by external expectations. They do what they're supposed to do, feel what they're supposed to feel, pursue what they're supposed to pursue. Individuation is the process of freeing yourself from this collective prison without becoming antisocial or destructive. It's finding your own internal moral compass, your own sense of purpose, your own unique way of contributing to the world that arises from your true nature. Have you ever wondered why certain activities, certain conversations, certain environments? The great truth that emerges from all this is this: you didn't come to this world to live someone else's life. You didn't come to fulfill others' expectations, to play roles that aren't yours, to repress your authentic nature for security or acceptance. You came to individuate, to become the most complete and unique expression of your human potential. But this process requires you to have the courage to face your own psyche with brutal honesty. It requires you to be willing to know both your luminous aspects and your shadowy aspects. It requires you to learn to relate to your suffering as teacher instead of enemy. It requires you to develop an authentic relationship with yourself before being able to have authentic relationships with others. And above all, it requires you to trust that your true nature, when expressed consciously, is exactly what the world needs from you. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need to wait until you feel completely ready. You just need to begin the process of being real with yourself. Jung understood something modern culture has forgotten. Your individuality isn't an accident that needs to be corrected to fit in. It's your unique contribution to the human symphony. When you repress your authentic nature, you not only limit yourself, you deprive the world of something only you can offer. So here's your final invitation, your moment of decision. You can continue living the safe but unsatisfying life of maintaining masks and fulfilling external expectations. Or you can begin the heroic journey of discovering and expressing who you really are, with all the risks and rewards this implies. If you choose the second path, if you decide to embark on your own individuation process, write in the comments, "I choose to be authentic." Because making this declaration publicly is already a first step toward the radical honesty with yourself that this process requires. And remember, Every time you choose authenticity over comfort, every time you integrate a repressed aspect of your personality, every time you make a decision from your true center instead of from fear, you're contributing not only to your own evolution, but to the evolution of collective human consciousness. Jung believed that when enough individuals do this deep internal work, when enough people become authentic expressions of their potential, the entire world transforms. Your personal individuation process is both a gift to yourself and a service to humanity. If this video has touched something real within you, subscribe to this channel and hit the bell to receive more content that supports you on this journey of self-discovery. Share this message with someone you know is ready for this deep conversation about what it really means to live an authentic life. And above all, be patient with yourself in this process. Individuation isn't a race you can win quickly. It's a lifelong dance between knowing yourself and expressing that truth in the world. Every day, you have new opportunities to choose authenticity, to integrate unrecognized aspects of your being, to align more deeply with who you really are. Your authentic life is waiting for you. Not in some distant future when you have everything figured out, but right now, in this moment, in the next decision you make about how you want to show up in the world. The journey of becoming who you really are begins with a single step, the decision to be real with yourself. Are you ready for that step?